A legal battle is unfolding in Washington, and it has quickly become one of the most closely watched constitutional disputes in recent memory. Everything moved incredibly fast. Within a short period of time, a federal court ruling triggered an emergency legal response that reached the United States Supreme Court. Lawyers on both sides rushed to file emergency paperwork, arguing that the issues involved go far beyond one individual and could shape the balance of power between the executive branch and the federal judiciary. At the center of the dispute is a simple but enormously important constitutional question. Can a sitting president be subjected to criminal process while still serving in office, or should those proceedings wait until the presidential term ends? That single question has divided constitutional scholars for years, and now it has become the focus of an intense legal fight. According to the reported filings, the president's legal team argued that immediate Supreme Court intervention was necessary to prevent what they described as an unprecedented constitutional conflict. Their position is that allowing criminal enforcement against a sitting president could interfere with the executive branch's ability to perform its constitutional responsibilities. The government, however, takes a different view. Its lawyers argue that the Constitution does not place any public official completely beyond the reach of the criminal justice system. In their opinion, accountability under the law remains a fundamental constitutional principle, regardless of public office. Because of these competing arguments, the Supreme Court was asked to temporarily preserve the status quo while the constitutional questions receive further consideration. It is important to understand what a temporary stay actually means. A stay is not a declaration that one side has won the case. Instead, it temporarily pauses further action while judges determine whether additional review is necessary. Courts often use this procedure when a dispute presents unusually significant legal questions or when immediate action could create consequences that would be difficult to reverse later. That distinction is critical. Many headlines focus only on dramatic developments, but legal proceedings rarely end with a single emergency order. Instead, emergency applications simply determine what happens while the larger constitutional issues continue moving through the judicial process. The constitutional arguments presented by both sides are substantial. Supporters of presidential immunity argue that the executive branch must remain independent from judicial interference during a president's term in office. They warn that allowing criminal proceedings against a sitting president could create opportunities for political abuse, especially if future presidents face criminal actions initiated by political opponents. In their view, the separation of powers exists precisely to prevent one branch of government from exercising excessive control over another. They also argue that the Constitution already provides a mechanism for addressing presidential misconduct through Congress. Under this interpretation, impeachment serves as the appropriate constitutional remedy while a president remains in office, with criminal proceedings potentially occurring afterward if necessary. Those opposing this argument see the issue very differently. They contend that no individual should receive complete immunity from criminal accountability simply because of the office they hold. According to this perspective, the rule of law requires that every government official remains subject to legal review whenever sufficient evidence exists. Legal scholars supporting this position frequently point to historic Supreme Court decisions emphasizing that presidential power is not unlimited. Although those earlier cases involved different legal questions, they established important principles concerning executive accountability and judicial authority. The disagreement, therefore, is not simply political. It is fundamentally constitutional. Both sides rely on different interpretations of separation of powers, executive authority, and the historical relationship between the presidency and the federal courts. That is why constitutional experts across the political spectrum consider these issues unusually significant. Whatever the courts ultimately decide could influence future administrations regardless of political party. For now, legal observers are watching every filing, every procedural order, and every statement issued by attorneys representing both sides. The next stage of the litigation could determine whether the court requests additional briefing, schedules expedited arguments, or allows lower courts to continue considering the dispute before any final constitutional ruling is issued. No matter which path the court chooses, one thing is already clear. The questions raised by this case extend far beyond a single lawsuit. They concern the scope of presidential authority, the limits of judicial power, and the constitutional framework that has governed the United States for more than 2 centuries. Those questions deserve careful legal analysis rather than political slogans, because the answers may influence constitutional law for decades to come.